The rat poison burned like liquid fire down my throat. I gasped, clutching at my neck as Dylan stood over me, his face twisted with something between triumph and anguish. My older brother, the person I'd trusted most in the world, had just handed me tea laced with death. Why? I choked out, my vision already blurring at the edges. Because it should have been mine, he hissed. All of it should have been mine. You don't deserve Leo. You don't deserve that mansion, that wealth, that life. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was closing. If only he knew how miserable I'd been. Yes, Leo had become the richest man in our province, but he'd never loved me. He kept mistresses, gambled, came home drunk. The money meant nothing when I spent every night alone, wondering why I wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Dylan's husband Theodore, the officer who'd been discharged after an injury, had loved my brother with quiet devotion. I'd seen it in his eyes during family gatherings. But Dylan had only ever seen Theodore's uniform, the prestige he'd lost, never the man himself. The floor rushed up to meet me. My last thought was regret, for the life I'd wasted, for the love I'd never known. Then darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was streaming through a familiar window. I sat up with a gasp, my hands flying to my throat. No pain. No burning. I looked around wildly and my heart stopped. This was my old bedroom. The one in my parents' house. The one I hadn't slept in for years. On the chair beside my bed hung a traditional wedding hanfu in deep crimson, embroidered with golden phoenixes. My wedding day. No, I whispered. This isn't possible. But the calendar on the wall confirmed it. I was 22 again. It was the morning I was supposed to marry Leo. I stumbled to the mirror, touching my younger face with trembling fingers. Oh, what? Was this a dream? Some hallucination as the poison took me? A commotion downstairs made me freeze. Raised voices, my parents and Dylan? I crept to the door and opened it a crack. I won't marry Theodore. Dylan was shouting. I'm supposed to marry Leo. It's my destiny. My blood turned to ice. My destiny? Those words. Dylan, please be reasonable, my father pleaded. The arrangements are made. Leo's family expects Wyatt. Then let them have Wyatt. I'll marry Leo instead. The certainty in his voice, the desperation. He wasn't just being dramatic. He knew something. The truth hit me like lightning. Dylan had been reborn too. He remembered our previous life, Leo's wealth, his success. And he was trying to change it, to take what he thought should have been his all along. I should have been furious. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. Because if Dylan remembered, then I had an advantage he didn't know about. I knew how he'd poisoned me. I knew his jealousy, his bitterness. And I knew something else. In our previous life, while I'd envied Dylan's loving husband, he'd envied my wealthy one. Neither of us had appreciated what we had. But this time would be different. I descended the stairs slowly. My mother saw me first, her face crumpling with relief and guilt. Wyatt, please. Your brother, he's... It's all right, Mother, I said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at me. Dylan's eyes widened and I saw fear flicker across his face. Good. Let him wonder what I knew. If Dylan wants to marry Leo so badly, he can have him. Wyatt, my father protested. You can't just. I'll marry Theodore instead, I continued, meeting Dylan's gaze steadily. After all, someone needs to. And I don't mind. The relief on my parents' faces was palpable. The confusion on Dylan's was delicious. He'd expected me to fight, to argue. Instead, I'd given him exactly what he wanted. He didn't know what I knew, that Leo was lazy, unfaithful, and his future success was just a lucky break from economic reforms he'd stumbled into. Without the knowledge of what was coming, Dylan would suffer the same miserable marriage I had. Meanwhile, I'd marry Theodore, the kind, loyal, hard-working man my brother had never appreciated. Are you certain? My mother asked, grasping my hands. I smiled and it was genuine. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The wedding preparations shifted into chaos. My mother and aunts scrambled to inform Leo's family of the change while I stood in my room, being fitted for different wedding clothes. Theodore's family was traditional, military. The hanfu they sent over was simpler than the ornate one meant for Leo's wedding, but somehow more elegant. Deep blue with silver embroidery, colors that spoke of honor and loyalty. You're making a mistake, Dylan hissed when he cornered me in the hallway. The household was too busy to notice us. Theodore is just a low-ranking officer. He'll be nothing. Leo is going to... Going to what? I interrupted softly. Become rich? How would you know that, Dylan? His face went pale. I don't know what you're... Don't you? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Tell me, brother. Have you been having vivid dreams lately? Dreams of another life. The terror in his eyes confirmed everything. How? He breathed. The same way you did, apparently. I adjusted my collar, keeping my expression neutral. But unlike you, I'm not going to waste this second chance. You can't know, you don't understand, he sputtered. Leo becomes the richest man in the province. You're throwing away everything. Am I? I smiled. Or are you? See, I remember our previous life too, Dylan. Every detail. Including how miserable I was with Leo. How he kept mistresses, gambled away money, how empty that mansion felt. While you had Theodore who loved you unconditionally, and you treated him like he was worthless because he lost his position. Dylan grabbed my arm. You don't understand. I can make it work this time. I can. You can live the life you think you wanted, I said, pulling away gently. And I'll live mine. May we both get what we deserve. The look on his face was complicated, anger, fear, confusion. But the household was calling for us. There was no more time. I met Theodore at the altar with my heart pounding. In my previous life, I'd only seen him at family gatherings, always quiet, always in the background while Dylan complained. I'd noticed he was handsome in an understated way, with strong features and serious dark eyes, but I'd never really looked at him. Now, seeing him in his officer's dress uniform, I couldn't look away. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone who'd served with honor. His face was beautiful in its masculinity, sharp jawline, straight nose, lips that looked stern until they quirked slightly at the corners. But it was his eyes that caught me. They were kind eyes, gentle despite their intensity. Those eyes met mine with confusion as I approached instead of my brother. There was a change in arrangements, the officiant explained quickly. Wyatt Braverman will be your husband instead of Dylan. I saw the questions in Theodore's expression but also something else, acceptance. He was a soldier, he understood duty. Even if this wasn't what he'd expected, he would honor it. Before we dive into this twisted, reborn, revenge and redemption, emotional love story, if you are obsessed with reborn and revenge stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also comment on the story, and don't forget this story is an original work of MeBL Stories, no copyrights. If you see this story in another channel, please report that channel for copyright and theft. Now let's dive in. That steadiness made my heart ache. Dylan had never deserved him. The ceremony was simple, traditional. We bowed to heaven and earth, to our parents, to each other. When Theodore took my hand to lead me to his family's home, his grip was firm and warm. I apologize for the confusion, I said quietly as we walked. Behind us, I could hear Dylan's wedding procession beginning, more elaborate, louder, everything he'd wanted. These things happen, Theodore replied. His voice was deeper than I'd remembered, smooth like aged whiskey. Though I admit I'm curious about the reason. Dylan wanted to marry Leo, I said honestly. I didn't mind switching. You didn't mind. He glanced at me and I saw the sharp intelligence in his eyes. He wasn't fooled. Most people would mind having their wedding arrangements changed at the last moment. I'm not most people. No, he agreed softly. I don't think you are. Theodore's family home was modest compared to what Leo's would have been, but it was clean and well kept. His mother greeted us with warm efficiency, clearly still flustered by the sudden change but determined to make the best of it. We've prepared the guest room for you, she told me kindly. I know this must all be very overwhelming. Thank you, I said, meaning it. The wedding banquet was small, Theodore's military friends, some neighbors, our immediate families. Dylan and Leo's wedding was happening simultaneously across town in a much grander venue, but I didn't regret my choice for a moment. Theodore's friends were rowdy but respectful, teasing him about finally settling down. I watched him smile and laugh with them, saw the loyalty and affection in their eyes. These were good men who'd served together, bled together. Your husband is well loved, an older officer told me, raising his cup. Theodore is one of the finest men I've ever served with. You're fortunate. I know, I said. And I meant it. Across the table, Theodore's eyes met mine. In them I saw question still but also the beginning of something else. Curiosity, perhaps. Interest. I smiled at him and after a moment he smiled back. The celebration wound down as evening fell. Theodore's mother showed me to what she called the guest room, but I knew what it really was. The room prepared for a married couple. The marriage bed. I've left fresh clothes and water, she said gently. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call. And Wyatt, my son is a good man. Please be patient with him. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. In my previous life, My first night with Leo had been awkward and disappointing. He'd been drunk, fumbling, more interested in getting it over with than anything else. I didn't know what to expect from Theodore. The door opened quietly. Theodore entered, now changed from his formal uniform into simpler clothes, loose pants and a shirt that showed the strong lines of his shoulders. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, studying me. "This is strange for both of us," he said finally. "Yes. You don't have to pretend otherwise." He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. "I know this isn't what you wanted. You were supposed to marry Leo." "I was never supposed to marry Leo," I said quietly. "Dylan was supposed to marry you." He turned surprised. "What do you mean?" "The original arrangement. Dylan was meant to marry you and I was meant to marry Leo. But this morning, Dylan insisted on switching. My parents begged me to be understanding and I agreed." Theodore's brow furrowed. "Why would Dylan want to switch? Leo has better prospects, comes from a wealthier family. Most would consider that a better match than a low-ranking officer. Dylan has his reasons." I stood up, moving closer to him. "But I have mine too. I wanted to marry you, Theodore. You don't even know me." "Don't I?" I reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his hand. He didn't move. "I know you're honorable, loyal, kind. I've seen how your friends respect you, how your mother loves you. I know that you serve with integrity and courage." His eyes searched mine. "Pretty words. But what do you really want, Wyatt? Why agree to this?" I could have lied. Could have given him easy answers. But something in his gaze demanded truth. "In another life," I said carefully, "I made different choices. I married someone who didn't value me, who saw me as an obligation. I was miserable. This time I wanted something different. Someone different." "You're speaking in riddles." "I know." I squeezed his hand gently. "Maybe someday I'll explain better. But for now, all I can tell you is that I chose you, Theodore. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb absently stroking across my knuckles. The touch sent warmth up my arm. "I was prepared to marry your brother," he admitted. "I'd spoken with him a few times at family gatherings. He seemed ambitious, proud. I thought we'd learn to understand each other. And now you're married to me instead." "And now I'm married to you instead," he echoed. A small smile touched his lips. "Who doesn't speak in riddles but says strange things about other lives? Who claims to want a low-ranking officer over a wealthy merchant's son? Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," he said honestly. "In my experience, most people want security, wealth, status. Then you haven't met the right people." I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of his body. "I don't want wealth that comes with misery. I don't want status that comes with loneliness. I want what I see in you, Theodore. Strength, kindness, honor." His free hand came up to cup my face, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palm. "You barely know me," he repeated, but his voice was softer now. "What if you're wrong? What if I'm not what you think I am? Then we'll figure it out together." I leaned into his touch. "That's what marriage is, isn't it? Learning each other. Building something. You're very certain for someone so young." "I'm older than you think," I said, and there was more truth in those words than he could know. Theodore studied my face for another long moment. Then slowly he leaned down and kissed me. It was gentle at first, questioning. His lips were soft against mine, tentative, as if he expected me to pull away. When I didn't, when I instead pressed closer and opened my mouth to him, he made a low sound in his throat and deepened the kiss. It was nothing like kissing Leo had been. Theodore kissed like he did everything else, with intention, with focus. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I could feel the strength in his body, the controlled power. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, his eyes were dark with desire. "We don't have to do anything tonight," he said, voice rough. "I know this is all sudden. We can take our time." "And if I don't want to take our time?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. But I'd wasted so much of my previous life being passive, accepting what was given to me. Not anymore. "What if I want my husband?" His pupils dilated. "Wyatt." "Unless you don't want me," I added quickly. "I don't want to pressure." He silenced me with another kiss, harder this time, more demanding. When he pulled back, his breathing was ragged. "I want you," he said, and the raw honesty in his voice made my heart race. "From the moment I saw you at the altar, even confused as I was. You're beautiful, Wyatt. I'd have to be made of stone not to want you." "Then have me," I whispered. Theodore lifted me as easily as if I weighed nothing, carrying me to the bed. He laid me down gently, his body covering mine as he kissed me again, my lips, my jaw, the sensitive skin beneath my ear. "Tell me if you want to stop," he murmured against my neck. "At any time. I won't want to stop." His laugh was low and warm. So certain. His hands found the ties of my wedding clothes, working them loose with surprising dexterity. "Have you done this before?" "Once," I admitted. It wasn't good." He paused, pulling back to look at me. "Then we'll make tonight better. I promise." And he did. Theodore undressed me slowly, reverently, as if unwrapping something precious. Each piece of clothing removed revealed more skin, and he kissed every inch he exposed. My collarbones, my chest, the flat plane of my stomach. By the time he'd removed everything, I was trembling with want. "Beautiful," he murmured, his hands tracing my body with careful touches. "You're so beautiful, Wyatt." I reached for his clothes, wanting to see him too, and he helped me, shedding his shirt and pants until we were both bare. His body was as impressive as I'd imagined. Broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, muscles defined from years of training, scars here and there that spoke of battles fought. "You're beautiful too," I said, running my hands over his chest, feeling his heart beating fast beneath my palm. He caught my hand and brought it to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "I want to make this good for you. You already are." He smiled and kissed me again, settling his weight more fully over me. I could feel his arousal against my hip, hard and hot, and my own body responded, heat pooling low in my belly. His hand trailed down my body, wrapping around my length, and I gasped at the sensation. Leo had never touched me like this, had never taken the time to learn what I liked. But Theodore was attentive, watching my face as he stroked me, adjusting his touch based on my reactions. "Is this good?" he asked, his voice rough. "Yes," I gasped. "Yes, Theodore, please." "Please what?" His thumb swiped over the tip and I arched into the touch. "Tell me what you want, Wyatt." "You," I panted. "I want you. All of you." His eyes darkened with desire, but he didn't rush. Instead, he reached for a small jar on the bedside table, oil I realized for exactly this purpose. His thoughtfulness made my chest tight with emotion. He prepared me carefully, gently, one finger at first and then two, stretching me while kissing away any discomfort. By the time he added a third finger, I was writhing beneath him, desperate for more. "Please," I begged. "I'm ready, I need." "Shoo," he soothed, withdrawing his fingers and positioning himself. "I've got you." He entered me slowly, so slowly, giving me time to adjust to the intrusion. It burned at first, the stretch almost too much, but he waited, peppering my face with gentle kisses until I relaxed around him. "Okay?" he asked, and I could hear the strain in his voice, the effort it took him to hold back. "Okay," I breathed. "You can move." He did, slowly at first, shallow thrusts that gradually deepened as my body accepted him. The burn faded, replaced by pleasure that built with each movement. He found a rhythm that had me gasping, gripping his shoulders as he moved inside me. "So good," he groaned against my neck. "You feel so good, Wyatt." I couldn't form words anymore, could only hold on as he thrust deeper, harder, his control fraying. When his hand wrapped around my neglected length, stroking in time with his movements, I shattered, crying out his name as pleasure overwhelmed me. Theodore followed moments later, burying himself deep as he found his own release, my name a prayer on his lips. Afterward he held me close, our bodies still entwined, both of us breathing hard. He pressed a kiss to my temple, gentle and sweet. "Was it better?" he asked softly. "Than before?" "So much better," I whispered, my eyes stinging with unexpected tears. "Theodore." "What is it?" He pulled back to look at me, concerned. "Did I hurt you?" "No." I smiled through the tears. "You were perfect. This was perfect. I never thought I could have this. Be this happy." Understanding softened his features. He wiped away my tears with his thumb. "Whatever happened before, whoever hurt you, I'm not them. I'll spend every day proving that to you if you'll let me." "I'll let you," I said and kissed him again. We made love twice more that night, slower the second time, playful the third. By the time we finally fell asleep, tangled together in the sheets, I felt more at peace than I had in either of my lives. This was what I'd been missing. This connection, this intimacy, this feeling of being truly wanted. And I would do everything in my power to keep it. The first few months of marriage passed in a blur of happiness I'd never experienced before. Theodore was everything I'd hoped and more, attentive, affectionate, genuinely interested in me as a person. He left early most mornings for his duties at the garrison, But he always kissed me goodbye, and he always came home to me at night. We'd have dinner together, talk about our days, and then retire to bed where we'd make love or simply hold each other, both equally precious. I learned his rhythms, his preferences. He took his tea with no sugar. He read military histories before bed. He had a scar on his left shoulder from a training accident when he was 16. He was ticklish just below his ribs, which delighted me to discover. And he learned me too. He discovered I liked to sleep late when I could. That I had a weakness for sweet pastries. That I was surprisingly good at managing household accounts. That I loved it when he held me from behind while I cooked, his chin on my shoulder, murmuring about his day. "You're different than I expected," he told me one night, tracing patterns on my bare back as we lay in bed. "Different how?" "Happier. More content. When I first met you at family gatherings, you always seemed distant, lost in thought. But now you're present. Vibrant. Because I'd been miserable in my previous life, I thought but didn't say. Because I'd been trapped in a marriage with no love while watching my brother have what I secretly wanted. Maybe I just needed the right person to be present for," I said instead. He kissed my shoulder. "I'm glad I could be that person." But as happy as I was, I knew challenges were coming. In my previous life, Theodore had been injured during a training exercise gone wrong in about 6 months. The injury had ended his military career and devastated Dylan, who'd only valued Theodore for his officer status. This time would be different. I would make sure of it. I began carefully, obliquely. "Theodore, have you ever thought about what you'd do if you weren't in the military?" He looked up from his book, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. You're so capable, I imagine you could do anything you set your mind to." "The military is all I've ever known," he said slowly. "My father was an officer, my grandfather. It's the family tradition. But if you had to do something else, what would it be?" He thought about it, his expression serious. "I suppose, logistics maybe. Supply chain management. I'm good at organizing things, seeing how pieces fit together. During campaigns, I often help plan supply routes." "That's a valuable skill," I said carefully. "Especially with the economy changing. Trade is expanding, businesses are growing. Someone good at logistics could do very well." "You sound like you're trying to recruit me for something," he teased. "Maybe I am." I set aside my own book and moved closer to him. "I want you to be happy, Theodore. And safe. The military is dangerous." His expression softened. "I know you worry. But I'm careful and I'm well trained. I'm not planning on going anywhere." I wanted to tell him about the future I remembered, about the accident that would leave him with a permanent injury. But how could I explain without sounding insane? Instead, I kissed him and held him close, and prayed I'd find a way to protect him when the time came. Meanwhile, word filtered back to us about Dylan and Leo. My brother had gotten his wish, the wealthy husband, the large house, the status. But the reality was already souring. "I heard Leo's been gambling again," Theodore's mother mentioned one day while we were at the market together. "Your poor brother must be worried." I said nothing, but I wasn't surprised. Leo had always been lazy and self-indulgent. Without the economic wave that had made him rich in my previous life, he was just a mediocre merchant's son with expensive tastes and no discipline. The next time Dylan visited our parents' house, I'd gone to help my mother with preparations for the Mid-Autumn Festival. He looked haggard. "Wyatt," he pulled me aside, his eyes wild. "What did you do? Why isn't it working?" "What isn't working, brother?" "Leo. He's supposed to be successful by now. The business should be taking off. But instead he just gambles and sleeps late and—" He grabbed my arm. "What did you do differently?" I pulled away calmly. "I didn't do anything, Dylan. You're the one who married Leo, remember? You're living your dream." "This isn't my dream." He was almost shouting now. "He's supposed to be rich, successful. Instead we're barely getting by and he doesn't even care." "Maybe," I said quietly, "he was only successful before because he stumbled into the right opportunity at the right time. Maybe without that he's just himself. Lazy. Unmotivated." "You knew," Dylan hissed. "You knew he'd be like this." "I knew that wealth without character is meaningless," I corrected. "I knew that marrying someone for their money instead of who they are is a recipe for misery. You could have had a good life, Dylan. Theodore would have loved you, taken care of you, built something meaningful with you. But you were too focused on what you thought you deserved to see what you actually had. And you get everything instead," he said bitterly. "You get the loving husband, the happy marriage." "I get what I chose," I interrupted. "Just like you're living with what you chose. That's how this works, Dylan. Actions have consequences." He stormed off and I felt no guilt. He'd chosen his path. Now he had to walk it. As the months passed, I watched for signs of Theodore's impending injury. I encouraged him to be extra careful during training exercises. I even accidentally mentioned concerns about safety protocols at the garrison, hoping to plant seeds of caution. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. The accident in my previous life had been caused by faulty equipment during a routine training drill. Unless I could convince Theodore to leave the military before then, I couldn't prevent it. So I began laying groundwork for an alternative. "I've been thinking about your logistics idea," I told him one evening. "About how good you are at seeing how things fit together." "Oh." He looked amused. "Still recruiting me?" "Always." I smiled. "But seriously, I've been talking to some merchants at the market. There's going to be an economic shift soon, new trade policies opening markets. Someone with your organizational skills could start a logistics business and do very well." "Where is this coming from, Wyatt?" He set down his chopsticks, studying me. "You've been pushing this for months now." I took a deep breath. "I'm worried about you. About your safety. Every day you go to the garrison, I worry you won't come home. And I think you could have a successful career outside the military. One where I don't have to worry." His expression softened. "Wyatt, I know it's asking a lot," I continued quickly. "Your family tradition, your sense of duty. But I need you to know that I don't value you for your uniform or your rank. I value you for who you are. And I'd be just as proud of you running a business as I am of you serving as an officer. More proud, maybe, because you'd be choosing your own path instead of following someone else's." Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "I'll think about it," he said. "I promise." It was more than I'd hoped for. The accident almost happened exactly as I remembered. Theodore came home one evening 3 weeks later, his face grave. "There was an incident at the garrison today. Training equipment failure, one of the climbing walls collapsed." My heart stopped. "Were you hurt?" "No. I wasn't on it at the time." He pulled me into his arms, holding tight. "But several of my friends were injured. One severely. This was it. This was the moment. In my previous life, Theodore had been on that wall. He'd fallen, shattered his leg, ended his career." "Wyatt, you're shaking," he said, concerned. "I was so scared," I whispered against his chest. "When you said there was an incident, I thought." "I'm fine. I'm here." He pulled back to look at me, cupping my face. "But you were right. You've been right all along. This isn't sustainable. Living with you worrying every day and now seeing my friends hurt because of negligence and faulty equipment." He took a deep breath. "I'm going to resign." Relief flooded through me so strongly my knees nearly buckled. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He kissed my forehead. "I've been thinking about what you said. About choosing my own path, building something. And I want to do that, with you. I want to start a business, take control of our future. I don't want to spend our lives with you scared every time I leave the house." I threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you. Thank you for trusting me." "Always," he murmured into my hair. "I'll always trust you, Wyatt." Theodore resigned the next week. His commanding officer tried to convince him to stay, but Theodore was firm. He'd served honorably for 8 years. It was time for a new chapter. His mother worried, his military friends were puzzled, but Theodore never wavered. And I stood beside him, supporting his decision completely. "So," he said one evening, papers spread across our kitchen table. "Let's talk about this business idea of yours. You seem to know quite a bit about economic shifts and market opportunities." I smiled. "I pay attention. And I have some ideas." Using my knowledge from my previous life, I helped Theodore identify the perfect niche: import-export logistics, specializing in goods from the newly opening southern markets. I knew which products would become valuable, which trade routes would open up, which partnerships to pursue. To anyone else, it would have looked like incredible luck or sharp instincts. Only I knew it was foreknowledge. Theodore threw himself into the work with the same dedication he'd brought to the military. He was brilliant at it, negotiating contracts, managing supply chains, building relationships with merchants and traders. Within 3 months, the business was turning a profit. Within 6, we were thriving. "I don't know how you knew," Theodore said one night, kissing me deeply. "But you were right about everything. The market timing, the opportunities, all of it." "I'm just good at reading trends," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "You're incredible," he corrected, pulling me onto his lap. "My brilliant, beautiful husband." We made love that night with joyous intensity, celebrating our success and our happiness. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Theodore whispered, "I want to adopt a child. Start a family with you. Would you want that?" My eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yes, I'd want that very much. As our success grew, Dylan's situation deteriorated further. Leo's business was failing. His gambling debts were mounting. Dylan, who'd thought he was marrying into wealth and prestige, instead found himself working constantly just to keep them afloat, while Leo contributed nothing. I saw my brother at family gatherings, looking progressively more hollow-eyed and bitter. He watched Theodore and me with undisguised envy, our success, our obvious affection for each other, our happiness. "It's not fair," he cornered me at our parents' New Year celebration. "You stole my life. You took what was meant to be mine." "I took nothing," I said firmly. "You chose Leo, remember? You insisted on it." "Because I knew," he stopped himself, but too late. "Because you knew Leo would become rich," I finished quietly. "Except he didn't. Because the circumstances that made him successful in that other life aren't present in this one. Without that lucky break, he's just a lazy, entitled man who thinks success should fall into his lap." "How do you know what happened in the other life?" Dylan demanded. "How do you remember?" "The same way you do." I met his eyes steadily. "We were both given a second chance, Dylan. But we used it differently. You tried to grab what you thought you deserved without understanding why things worked out the way they did. I chose to build something real with someone who valued me. I could have done that with Theodore. Could you?" I interrupted. "Would you have loved him without his officer status? Would you have supported his decision to leave the military, or would you have resented him like you did in our previous life when he got injured? Be honest with yourself, Dylan. You never wanted Theodore. You wanted what you thought he represented." His face crumpled. "So I'm just supposed to suffer? Live in misery because I made the wrong choice?" "You're supposed to learn from your mistakes," I said, not unkindly. "You're still young, Dylan. You could divorce. Leo, start over. Find someone you actually love instead of someone you think will give you the life you want. But that requires humility and self-reflection, things you've never been good at." He stared at me with hatred and desperation in equal measure. Then he turned and walked away. I felt pity for him, but I didn't regret my words. Sometimes the truth hurt. But it was necessary. Our business continued to flourish. Within a year, Theodore's logistics company had become one of the most successful in the province. We'd moved into a larger house, hired staff, established ourselves as respectable merchants. But more importantly, we were happy. Theodore was a different man outside the military, more relaxed, more openly affectionate. He laughed more, smiled more. Every morning when he left for the office, he kissed me goodbye. Every evening when he returned, he sought me out first, pulling me into his arms before doing anything else. "I love coming home to you," he'd whisper against my neck. "Best part of my day." We'd make love often, sometimes quick and passionate against the wall when he came home hungry for me, sometimes slow and tender in our bed, exploring each other's bodies like we had all the time in the world. Which we did. I'd never been so physically intimate with another person. Leo had treated sex like an obligation. But Theodore treated it like worship, like every time we came together was sacred and precious. "You're insatiable," I teased one evening after he'd pulled me into the study for the second time that day. "Only for you," he murmured, his hands already working open my clothes. "Always for you, Wyatt." We began the adoption process for a child. The local orphanage had many children in need of homes, and we wanted to give one of them a family. That's where we met Moses. He was 5 years old, with serious dark eyes and a watchful expression. He'd been at the orphanage since infancy, and he was quiet, careful not to draw attention to himself. "That's Moses," the orphanage director said. "Sweet boy, very intelligent. But he rarely gets considered because he's not outgoing like some of the others." I knelt down to Moses's level. "Hello. I'm Wyatt. What are you drawing?" He showed me his paper, a careful sketch of a dog. "I like dogs," he said softly. "Do you?" "We've been thinking about getting a dog." I glanced at Theodore, who was watching the interaction with a soft expression. "Would you like to help us choose one?" Moses's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" That was the beginning. We visited Moses regularly over the next few weeks, getting to know him, letting him get to know us. Theodore was wonderful with him, patient, kind, never pushing too hard. And Moses slowly began to open up, his serious expression giving way to shy smiles and, eventually, genuine laughter. The day we officially adopted him was one of the happiest of my life. Moses clutched both our hands as we left the orphanage, and when we got home he looked around his new room with wonder. "This is really mine?" he asked. "Really yours," Theodore confirmed. "Forever." Moses threw his arms around both of us and I felt tears slip down my cheeks. This family we were building was everything I'd ever wanted. True to our promise, we also adopted a dog, a gentle golden retriever we named Luna. Moses was over the moon, and watching him play with Luna in our garden filled me with profound contentment. The 20th day of the Lunar New Year arrived. My parents invited the whole family for a celebration, and despite my misgivings about seeing Dylan, I agreed to go. Theodore came with me of course and Moses and Luna as well. Dylan and Leo were already there. Leo looked disheveled, with the telltale signs of someone who'd been drinking too much and sleeping too little. Dylan looked worse, gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes and a feverish brightness that worried me. "Look at you," Dylan said when he saw us arrive. "The perfect family. Successful husband, adopted son, even a dog. You have everything." "We have enough," I said carefully. "And we're grateful for it." Throughout the meal I felt Dylan watching us. The way Theodore cut food for Moses. The way Moses laughed at something Theodore said. The way Theodore and I exchanged glances and smiles, communicating without words. Everything Dylan could have had if he'd chosen differently. After dinner Dylan brought me tea. "Peace offering," he said. "For being difficult earlier." I took the cup but didn't drink. Something in his expression, too bright, too eager, set off alarm bells. "You should drink it while it's hot," he urged. I looked down at the tea then up at my brother. "Is this rat poison, Dylan?" He went pale. "What?" "On the 20th day of the Lunar New Year. A cup of tea. Poison." I set the cup down carefully. "That's how you killed me in our previous life, isn't it? And now you're trying again." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents and Theodore were staring at us in shock. "What is he talking about?" my mother asked. But I kept my eyes on Dylan. "I remember everything. The burning in my throat. Watching you stand over me as I died. Your last words to me, because it should have been mine." "Wyatt," Theodore stepped forward but I held up a hand. "You weren't the only one who was reborn," I told Dylan quietly. "We were both given a second chance. But I used mine to build something real. You used yours to chase the same empty dreams, and when they didn't materialize, you decided I deserved to die. Again. It's not fair." Dylan finally exploded. "You have everything. The loving husband, the successful business, the child, the perfect life. It should be mine. I'm the older brother I deserve." "You deserve nothing," I interrupted, my voice hard. "You chose your path, Dylan. You insisted on marrying Leo. You rejected Theodore who would have loved you. You gambled on wealth over character and you lost. That's not my fault. That's yours. So I should just accept being miserable?" he shouted. "Watch you live the life I was supposed to have?" "The life you were supposed to have," I said standing up, "was the one you chose. With Leo. For better or worse. That was your decision. What you don't get to do is kill me because you regret your choices." "Wyatt," my father said, his face ashen. "Is this true? Did Dylan try to poison you?" I picked up the teacup carefully. "I think we should have this analyzed. See what's in it." Dylan's face crumpled. He knew he was caught. Theodore moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. "If you've harmed my husband," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "or attempted to, there will be consequences." "I haven't harmed anyone," Dylan protested. "It's just tea. Wyatt is paranoid, talking nonsense about other lives and—" "Then you won't mind if we have it tested," I said calmly. The authorities did test it. The tea contained a lethal dose of rat poison. Dylan was arrested. Leo, in a rare moment of clarity, divorced him, wanting nothing to do with the scandal. My parents were devastated, unable to understand how their eldest son could have fallen so far. As for me, I felt only sadness. Not for myself. I was safe, loved, protected. But for Dylan, who'd wasted 2 entire lifetimes being bitter about what he didn't have instead of appreciating what he did. The scandal passed. Dylan was sentenced to prison for attempted murder. My parents, ashamed and heartbroken, eventually moved to another province to start over. I felt guilty about their pain, but Theodore held me through those difficult nights. "You didn't cause this," he said firmly. "Dylan's choices are his own. You gave him every opportunity to choose differently and he refused. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." "I know. I just wish." "I know." He kissed my forehead. "But you have a family who loves you now. Let us be enough." And they were. They were more than enough. Moses grew into a bright, happy boy. He called us both Papa, Papa Wyatt and Papa Theodore, and Luna was his constant companion. Watching him run through our garden, laughing and carefree, healed something in me I hadn't known was broken. The business continued to thrive. Theodore's logistics company became one of the most successful in the entire region, with clients from across the country. We moved into an even larger house, hosted dinner parties for business associates and friends, became respected members of the community. But more than any of that external success, we were happy. Every night, I fell asleep in Theodore's arms. Every morning, I woke to his kisses. We made love often, our connection deepening with time rather than fading. He knew every inch of my body, every sound I made, exactly how to touch me to drive me wild. "I love you," he whispered one night as we lay tangled together, both breathless and sated. "I loved you from the moment I saw you at that altar, confused and uncertain but so beautiful. And I've fallen deeper in love with you every day since." "I love you too," I said, tears slipping down my temples. "You were my second chance, Theodore. My chance to do things right, to choose love over everything else. And I'd choose you again. Every time in every life I'd choose you." He kissed me then, tender and deep, and we made love again, slow and sweet, a celebration of everything we'd built together.